No quick fix for diastasis, and diet is a big part of reducing bloating. But are there any specific workouts that target the bread loafing or the way the belly comes out at the top and makes me look pregnant? So the bread loafing, so that's when you have your, that kind of loafing look down that center line. The reason for the loafing look is rectus abdominis, so those are six-pack abs, dominance. So that means they do too much. They're always tight. I'm so like, I'm going to do all the work, right? Oblique tightness, so that's the obliques that bring the rib cage in and down. They're tight, they're stuck. And deep core weakness, so those are the TVAs and the pelvic floor. And the reason this happens is what we were just talking about. Dominance with one tight muscle happens because something else is too weak. So it's doing somebody else's job. So in the case of bread loafing and pregnancy and diastasis, it tends to be because of this order. We get pregnant. A deep core stretches to accommodate the baby. That means it's not stabilizing us. So the deep core stabilizes our back, it stabilizes us, it protects everything. It also flattens our belly. But that's stretched, so it can't do its job because we're pregnant. So what happens is the obliques, which move us rotationally, end up stabilizing us. So think about that. The obliques, instead of kind of coming in and down like this, they start gripping and holding to stabilize us because our deep core can't do that. So now we're pulling, and that's what that ridge down here starts being. That's that gripping here. That's what pulls our rib cage to be wide. Okay, so now our rib cage is wide and pulled. Now, normal during pregnancy, the rib cage has to open, so it kind of all makes sense to our body, so it sticks. Now, our moving is now stabilizing. Stabilizing is stretched. So what is left? What's left is our rectus abdominis and our back. So now our rectus abdominis is doing everything. And it's always been the strongest muscle group because as kids, what did? We did lots of sit-ups and planks and everything that makes us work that way. Unfortunately, obliques being tight pulls the rectus abdominis apart, which is what makes the diastasis worse, which is why we have to work on that 360 breathing all the way through. All right, so now we know why our obliques are tight and our rectus abdominis is dominant. We give birth, yay for us, but we, in general, don't even know how to get our deep core to work. So we go back to our body going, oh, I know how to work. It's the rectus abdominis because that's the strongest muscle. So we kind of just carry on and let those strong muscles get stronger and the weak muscles get weaker. And that's what causes the bread loafing. And the upper belly is that wide rib cage. So how do we address this? Because that's what we need to do. One, diet is a huge part of the problem. If you're having bloating foods, that is wheat. I'm going to go through the most common, the inflammatory ones. Wheat, dairy, GMOs, alcohol, and big one is sugar. Huge. So if you're continually having any of those 5 food groups, plus for other people, eggs. I just found out that eggs impact me. Who knew? I didn't, right? So we've got eggs. For some people, legumes. I've had people that I've coached who had issues with lettuce and spinach if it was raw. They just couldn't eat like raw green leafy vegetables. It bloated them. Kale, all of those things. So it doesn't have to be unhealthy foods that could cause you to bloat. It could be anything, nuts, all sorts of things. So you need to reduce the bloating because if you're bloating and pushing out, it's very difficult for your muscles to come back in. And the bloating can get better once you are stronger. Again, chicken and egg. But here's the thing, your muscles can't get stronger whilst you're bloating. So the first thing you have to deal with, which is if you've gone through the 8-week progression, we've already removed all of the main inflammatory foods. So then if that hasn't helped, you should be doing the gut health plan, which is removing everything else and then reintroducing so you can find out what the issue actually is. Because you cannot get a fully strong functional core whilst you have loads of bloating pushing out. And that is common with anybody who has a shelf up here. That is huge. So bloating, you have to have the diet under control. And if you're not prepared, and not everybody is, to remove all of the inflammatory foods and then reintroduce them, or to fully just commit to trying to de-bloat everything, then you kind of have to also just realize that your belly is never going to be flat, because it's going to have a lot of issues kind of trying to strengthen into that position. And not everybody wants a flat belly. It's not going to necessarily stop you from becoming functional and out of pain. It just may stop you from getting that final, like, everything connected and flat and how you want, right? So it's everybody's choice as to which way you want to go. But if you're looking to remove that shelf or to really flatten into your belly, the diet is key. 100% key. You can't do it without, realistically. Then you have to stop the external core from taking over. What do we need to do from that? We have to strengthen the weak muscle, which is the deep core. So that's a lot of those very gentle ball squeezing exercises, focusing on that Kegel, the connection between the pelvic floor and the TVAs, and not working too hard. So for example, in a knee lift, I could come in and I could go, and I could like put every mighty thing into it and I could do my knee lifts. But I'm using my external core to do it. So there's probably no point if my deep core is what's the problem is, right? So instead you could do a very gentle engagement until everything is flat but not tense, right? And then you should be able to still lift your knees without shaking, right? So if I was to do this with a very gentle engagement, if I was weak and then I went, I would find I shifted. Or I'd find that my belly would go up as I do it, or down. I wouldn't maintain that flatness with minimal effort. And it's about how little effort can I use to maintain stability. All right? I want you to repeat that. How little effort can I use to maintain stability? Because there's no point in using a load of effort if you're trying to target the deep core. Because your deep core will say, whoo, everybody else is doing it. I'm going to go off and watch TV, right? It's not going to do it. I always liken it to your kids. If you keep tidying your kids' rooms, because if they leave it long enough, mum does it, they're never going to tidy their room. Because the easier action is to let somebody else do it. And that's what's going to happen with the core. So if you've gone through all of the 8-week progression and you've fixed your diet, but you still look like you're bread loafing, then you're using too much effort in the foundational moves, okay? So you want to go back and you just want to work on little bits of effort and stabilizing. And that's going to be huge. You then need to release the obliques, so you need to focus on releasing those obliques with some massage work, and you need to focus on stretching out the rectus abdominis because that's going to be too tight. So that's little low cobras, breathing into the stomach in that area, massaging the obliques out. Then we need to bring the rib cage down. So once you've got the deep core on board, you can then start focusing on your obliques and bringing the rib cage in and down. We start by working the back, so we want to Release the back to bring the rib cage down. So the first step is remove flared rib cage. Second step is upper belly program to bring the rib cage in and down. So then you're using things like chops and rotational work to work your obliques. But your deep core has to be on board first. If you bring your rib cage in and down with oblique work before your pelvic floor and deep core is on board, you can cause a lot of pressure going down into the pelvic floor and causing other issues. So always focus on the order. Pelvic floor, then TVAs, releasing the big tight muscles whilst you're doing the other two, then strengthening the obliques, and then into the rectus abdominis. Anybody who starts with the rectus abdominis, so like old school, start with the crunches to bring the gap together, nearly always ends up with bread loafing and reopening their gap because they twisted in a wrong way and they haven't trained the deep core yet. Okay, so focus on the order. But hopefully that helps. Diet, deep core, release the tight ones, then bring in oblique work to bring that rib cage in and down. And by the end of doing all of that, you should feel like you have really good control, no bread loafing, and are able to engage and feel really strong in the whole core.